Stop me if you've heard this one before. Kari Lake, Blake Masters, Mark Fincham, and Abraham Hamadeh all run on the same platform, feature on the same flyers, speak at the same events, discuss the same issues, air joint commercials portraying all four as a package deal, and all boast the self-same Trump endorsement. But when the election tally is finally counted, over a full week later, the only one even close to winning is the least popular one. Who broadcast his connection to Trump the loudest? Jazz hands. Now, let me get this straight. Kari Lake, in the run-up to the election, alleges Maricopa County elections have more issues than Detective Comics. Maricopa County election officials' response was to form a political action committee to oppose Trump candidates like Kari Lake across the state. They mock anyone and everyone who calls them out for it over social media for a solid year, then take a full week and change to count the vote, only to ultimately arrive at an election result which is a near complete inversion of what any alternative or mainstream political poll showed in the days leading up to the election. That'll show her. Did I mention Maricopa County election officials are availing themselves of pro bono legal representation by Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook's Political Action Committee, the same one which targeted key districts in 2020 as boasted by the infamous Time magazine article, and is currently chaired by an avowed unrepentant never-Trumper? Because that's a neat little factoid to file away in the old brain box. I won't belabor the subject of electoral fortification, not least of which because I kind of already did many months prior to the 2020 election and several times prior to that, and I did so in a fair amount of detail. I've long advocated the abolition of mail-in ballots except for overseas military or for the infirmed with a doctor's note, and I did so long before the mere suggestion became compulsorily associated with insurrection. For more elucidation on the topic, watch my mail-in ballots are BS video, but you better do it outside of YouTube, as the Google Gestapo nearly nuked my entire channel over it almost a year ago, hence why I had to remove every election-related video, including my most recent ones, just this week. It's still on Bitchute, Odysee, Rumble, or if you prefer to support the snark directly, you can join us all in the RazörForce in the link below at Unauthorized TV and watch it there, where I will soon be streaming very shortly. Now, I'm kind of folding away the Razor character here for a moment, and for one simple reason. Rocking the uniform and dropping F-bombs like Ron Paul at a tax audit would, I feel, cheapen the impact of what occurred in this election week, I suppose we're stuck with now. And make no mistake, left, right, center, or sideways, you are being gaslit about the American election process. I still vividly recall the excruciating sense of abject bafflement that swept the entire nation when the 2000 election took more than an evening. It was not always like this. In fact, up until about 3 election cycles ago, it wasn't really like this in Arizona either. Ask any longtime resident, assuming they haven't already moved to avoid the light rail hobos, crackheads, and California license plates. For decades, Arizona election officials boasted openly about being able to have 90% of mail-in ballots counted by election day morning. It wasn't until the California DNC fired tens of millions in wine mom money to elect Kyrsten Sinema in 2018 that suddenly a week-long count was the rule rather than the exception in the Sonoran Desert. On election eve, with 99% of precincts reporting, Martha McSally held a 2-point advantage over Kyrsten Sinema. Over the following week, that number would outright invert. And while the mainstream media and then county recorder Adrian Fontes claimed it was due to higher than expected volume, in truth, turnout in that election cycle actually underperformed compared to projections. Every race since 2018, when I warned you all was the dress rehearsal for what would occur nationally in 2020 and thereafter, has ended in a deferred count lasting no less than a week, culminating in an improbable upset Democratic victory, raising more red flags than a Chinese military parade in the process. And the reply is as puerile as it is predictable. In Arizona alone, there is presently a multi-million-dollar ad buy on every television station where air quotes Republicans, allege that to question a system staffed, implemented, tallied, and counted by corruptible, inherently flawed individuals with inborn political biases in a contentious election cycle where one entire side are being cast as the reincarnation of the Hugo Boss Brigade is to doubt immutable laws of the universe like water rolling downhill, trees casting shade, or video essayists reading Wikipedia. But the most important midterm takeaways have nothing whatsoever to do with what Time magazine laughably described as fortification. As if it's a loaf of Iron Kids bread infused with vitamin D and C. Remember, kids, we need to be more like Europe, except, you know, the whole voting on only one day, no mail-in ballots, and always with an ID thing. Everything else, though, run, don't walk. I'd humbly submit that electoral irregularities have existed since time immemorial. Look at the Battle of Athens, folks. Not perhaps in this brazen or all-encompassing a fashion, but prior party officials have adapted and overcome even that. The difference is, this GOP didn't want to. As far back as June, when Blake Masters was polling within 2 points of Chairman Mark Kelly and his $50 million California war chest, Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy announced their intention to cease funding all Trump-endorsed races in the state of Arizona, essentially declaring their intention to initiate a Tea Party-style purge of Trump supporters even at the cost of the Senate. A Senate, I'd remind you, that wasn't even supposed to be in play and likely never would have been if not for Trump and the America First candidates he endorsed. The botched Brutus backstab wouldn't have been so crushingly evident if the self-same GOP hadn't spent nearly $200 million re-electing Ron DeSantis in a Florida governor's race he'd been pulling 20 points ahead in since March. And no matter how designedly mum he's been on the subject, it's painfully obvious who Conservative Inc. has selected to play the part of Princess Cruz in the forthcoming election primaries, folks. The fortification was a given. The question was whether A, election laws had been tightened up enough to withstand it, and B, if the GOP would fund and fight against it. And while the answer to each is a resounding hell nah, we're fortunate in that the answer to the former can be addressed by fixing the latter. I said it on the RazörForce offensive a fair few weeks ago. If the party of ostensible diversity, the DNC, understands that it pays to purge your own ranks out of loyalty's sake on occasion, how is Trump the only asshole on the right who seems even dimly aware of this fact? And only then because he's fallen victim to it fucking repeatedly. 2022 was decisive in the sense that we had multiple state-level opportunities to purge the party for them. I've said on many the occasion, but contrary to the media's Gregorian chant, MAGA is not a cult of personality. It existed when Trump was still a fucking game show host. It's the sequel to the Tea Party, which was a reboot of the Buchanan Brigade, which was the ghost of the Goldwater movement, and on ad infinitum. It ain't a cult of personality, because Trump fucking inherited it. If you piss your panties and black pill instead of learning from and adapting to this deliberately sabotaged opportunity, you best not bellyache about the result in the aftermath, because the gun that matters the most is the one at your back, and you will have had your shot at fumigating the vermin in your own midst, and you didn't do dick, which in my eyes makes you at least as contemptible as Conservative Inc. The black pill is the gospel of inaction, the doctrine of the impotent, and the clarion call of the cunt. I'm Razor Fist. God fucking speed.